Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast, episode 50. I'm your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good. We are without Matt Jackson again, unfortunately. Y'all keep praying for him if you're praying kind of people. He texted us and said that he's back up in Western North Carolina. If you don't know, he lives up there, and so his whole town has been pretty wiped out by Hurricane Helene, and he's been driving around town, passing out food. Their church has kind of been a hub for the whole community to come in and get what they need. He said he's been working 13-hour days, barely eating, barely showering. So, prayers up.
No internet too, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. He was sleeping at the church for a little while until he got power back. I think he does have power now.
Gotcha.
So, anyway, yeah, he's up there helping people, serving with his church. So we'll keep praying for him. And with all that being said, on this episode of the CouchScouts Podcast, we are going to be re-examining the 2023 rookie class and kind of redrafting based on current observations. Like, who would we take first, knowing what we know now? It's going to be super flex and tight end premium settings. But before we jump into the episode, I want to take a second to talk about the website, and not just the website. I just mentioned Jackson and what he's got going on. This is something that's pretty personal for us. I have family that's been affected. You have family. You said your grandfather's 99 years old, still doesn't have power. And so we said this last week. If you missed the show last week or you've missed the announcement, we are giving away 100% of the proceeds from CouchScouts.com for the month of October to the American Red Cross for hurricane relief in Western North Carolina. So when we promote the website tonight, which I'm about to do, please know it's not about, hey, we're trying to make money or whatever. We are trying to raise money to help people who really, really need it right now. And I think it's a great product. So we have an all-22 film room where you can get in there and study Devy prospects. You can get in there and study IDP players. We have a rookie guide that we're going to release annually, and so that'll be part of our subscription package. We have a bonus podcast that Rupert and I will be recording right after we get off of this show. We got all kinds of stuff on there, and so you can get all of that, pay what it would normally cost, and we're going to donate 100% of it. So it's like if you just went on the Red Cross website and made a donation, it's exactly like that, except you also get great Dynasty content and tools at no extra cost. So we want you to do that. You can also get merch. You can get a hat like the one I'm wearing right now. And again, we're going to donate 100%. So definitely check it out, CouchScouts.com. We appreciate you guys joining us in helping out Western North Carolina. So with all of that being said, let's jump in, and we are going to be redrafting the 2023 draft class, knowing what we know now. And the way we'll do this is I'll say, okay, number one, we both had the same person. We'll kind of talk about it. Number two, okay, we had somebody different. Let's talk about that. So we'll just kind of work our way through the rankings here. And at number one, this is probably not a surprise to anybody, but we both had CJ Stroud as our number one. If we could go back and do it all over again, 101 in the 2023 class would be CJ Stroud. Rupert, I don't feel like a whole lot needs to be explained there, but why would you take CJ Stroud right now, number one, if you could redo it?
Tell you what, I wish the Panthers could redo it and take Stroud number one overall. And I wish I would have in the 2 weeks that I ended up with the 101 where I went Bijan instead. But yeah, he's just been off the charts phenomenal since he stepped on the field. Looks like a long-term dynasty player. He's not the typical rushing quarterback where you're worried about injuries as much and longevity. He's a precision pocket passer that'll probably play for the next 20 years. seeing the way that things are going now. So he's a guy that's going to be locked and loaded on your roster for, as longer than I've been playing fantasy football already. So to me, it's absolutely no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not like, hindsight is 2020, right? You look back and you're like, okay, Bijan went top 10 in the NFL draft. He was the tape was absolutely phenomenal. There was so much to love with that. Theoretically, he should have been stepping into a bell cow role, but we're still talking about Tyler Algier a couple of years later. Um, so it's easy to go back and second guess it now, but yeah, like had we known that CJ Stroud was going to hit the way he's hit in a super flex league, he's got to be the 101. And to our credit, I will say I'll take a little mini victory lap here. We had CJ Stroud as our QB1 in that class.
Both of us, yes.
Against consensus. And yet I had a league where I was like, you know what? I'm pretty strong at quarterback. I don't feel like I really need a quarterback. And I was on the clock at 104, and CJ Stroud was there. He was my QB1. I took Jackson Smith and Jigba. I regret that deeply right now, especially since the quarterbacks that I felt so good about, it was Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields. So, yeah, that one stings a lot. But yeah, CJ Stroud 101. I don't think very many people would disagree with that. He's pretty much a consensus top 3 startup draft pick at this point. So things get interesting at number 2 here. You and I chose different players. You went with Devin Achane, and I chose Puka Nacua. So we'll have a little mini debate here about that. But let's start with Achane. Why did you take Achane at number 2 overall in this redraft here?
Frankly, being a little spicy, making it a little more interesting than just being consistent the entire time. But my reasoning for going Achane is, to me, he's the closest thing to Christian McCaffrey that we'll see, a guy that will break fantasy with rushing and receiving, a guy that can kind of carry the bell cow role, even though people don't view him that way just because he's not the biggest back. But he showed it in college, and he's shown it in the NFL as well when he gets a chance. And he's tied to a great offense, really good offense coordinator that knows how to use them and loves using them. And he's a week winner as long as he's healthy. So that was kind of my reasoning going, despite my love for Puka.
Yeah, I don't dislike Achane at all. We're gonna be talking about him. He was my 104, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But agree with everything he said. He's explosive. He's talented. He can do a lot with a little, but he can also carry a big workload. He's getting peppered with receptions. Obviously the offense as a whole has looked really anemic since they've had Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley and whoever else playing at quarterback. I think they had Tim Boyle in there for a minute, maybe. It's been ugly. So when the offense gets back to a competent NFL offense, I think Achane will pick right back up being a 20-plus point per game fantasy player, and he's young. So I love this. It's hard to argue with the pick. I went with Puka Nacua just because I feel like he's kind of out of sight, out of mind right now. Obviously, he's been injured so far this season. But when you look at what he did last season, and I know, the draft capital was not what we expected, but I'm not worried about that. Like running backs with day 3 draft capital, they get replaced all the time. But wide receivers, when they show out as a day 3 pick, they tend to keep their job. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's only a matter of time until Puka gets paid big money. And he broke a ton of records, rookie records in the receiving department, like records that guys like Justin Jefferson set. He's breaking them. So this guy is a league-winning, difference-making player, and he plays at a position where I just think there's going to be more longevity than these running backs, where you might be looking at a 4 to 6 year window, whereas Puka, it could be 8 to 10. So that's kind of why I went with Puka Nacua at number 2 in this redraft here.
Longevity was the limit that I played with, but I feel like as me as a dynasty player, I've been looking too long term almost, and I've been wanting to play the 8 to 10 year horizon. I kind of forget I probably need to start playing more in the 3 to 4 year horizon to try and bring home some more championships. So I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
me changing that mindset kind of influenced my decision here going.
I think that's valid, and especially if Puka was averaging way less points than some of these other guys, um, and you're only taking him for the longevity factor, I'd totally agree with you. I think the fact that he was like a 20+ point per game guy, especially in the back half of last season, that really is what kept Puka at number 2 for me. But I totally agree. I mean, we play Dynasty in 3 to 4 year windows, and there's certainly an argument for HN with the especially with the positional scarcity at running back compared to receiver. It's so much easier to replace a guy like Puka Nacua than a Devin HN. So going on to the number 3, you chose Puka. I went with Bijan, who we haven't talked about yet. He was the 101, obviously in consensus when we were actually doing the 2023 draft a couple of years ago. I took him at 103 here, and you had him at 104. Let's talk about Bijan for a minute. I mean, I had him above HN, but I don't feel confident in that take. It seems like every week he's given us more reason to kind of be concerned, putting up mid to low end RB2 numbers despite the Dynasty RB1 price tag. And I don't know, how concerned are you about Bijan here? Like, is 3 just feeling way too high at this point in a loaded class?
I wouldn't say it's too high. It's just it really has been concerning the last couple of weeks. Like when I've watched the Falcons, like I don't see the same ridiculously explosive player that I feel like I saw last year and saw in college. And it's just giving me a little pause. Like did something happen this all season? Has he been dealing with some injuries or things like that, or is he just like a little bit checked out? I don't know what's going on.
Scheme fit? I noticed that
Yeah.
somebody posted a graphic, and I wish I could give credit, but I don't remember who it was. But it was one of these next gen stats kind of that showed all of his rush attempts, and they were all to the outside. There was nothing between the tackles. And that was kind of baffling to me because he's good between the tackles. I mean, he's not just this
Incredible.
bounce it outside kind of guy. I mean, he's got great power. He's got great contact balance. He's got really good vision and patience. Uh, I don't know if they're using him the wrong way. I really thought, especially bringing in a guy from the Rams system, those running backs in the Rams system are always, from the Sean McVay coaching tree, they're always killing it. So yeah, it's baffling to me right now. I still believe in the player. The team's obviously heavily invested in him, and at this point, I'm just trying to stay patient and not overreact to a slow start to the season.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, don't overreact too much.
Yeah, so at number 4, we've talked about both of these guys. I finally went with HN here, and you finally went with Bijan. So, I really feel if you put these 3 guys, Puka, HN, Bijan, and even potentially the guy that I'm going to take next, in any order, I'm not going to argue about it. So let's move to number 5 here. I went with Jahmyr Gibbs at 105. You went with Sam Laporta. Defend yourself, Rupert. How could you take Sam Laporta over Jahmyr Gibbs?
Just due to the fact that we put this as tight end premium scoring for the redraft, and the fact that he was the tight end overall number 1 in his rookie year, when tight ends are notoriously slow to develop, usually take 3 years or so. For him to be able to do what he did his rookie year is just outstanding. And he's got a long, road ahead to continue to improve and become more involved in the offense. It was tough because I really love Gibbs. And, but honestly, like the top 6, or between 2 and 6, there's really no wrong answer between this assortment of players.
I will say yours is the wrong answer. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to say it, man, because no, I think there's a clear. I mean, again, you're trying not to overreact to 4 weeks into the season here. I guess 5 weeks, but they've had a bye. So if you've got a 4-game sample from Sam Laporta. He hasn't gone over 5 targets yet this season. With the emergence of Jamison Williams, I mean, I know the talent is there. I like Sam Laporta. I know tight end is scarce, but running back is super scarce right now too. And Jahmyr Gibbs is balling out every single week this year. I mean, you could make an argument for him over the other running backs that we've already talked about. And Laporta is just not getting it done right now. So, again, I know he was great last season. And I know that 4 weeks is a relatively small sample size. He hasn't cracked double digits. I mean, I guess in tight end premium scoring he has, but in standard scoring, he hasn't even had a double-digit fantasy point game yet this year, Sam Laporta. You don't feel good about plugging him into your lineup. So I don't see any way that you take him over Jahmyr Gibbs right now. And Jahmyr Gibbs, for me, like I could argue having him up as high as 2 or 3, but definitely would not put him any lower than 5 in this exercise for me. So continuing here to the 6th pick, you did take Jahmyr Gibbs. I didn't go Laporta. I went with Anthony Richardson. And this is an interesting one. You didn't take Richardson until 7, so only a pick later. So we're not that far off here. But this was a guy that he was going 102 in real drafts, in most real drafts in 2023. And there were people arguing he should have been going 101 over Bijan because of the rushing upside. He was a first-round startup pick this offseason. And now we're taking him 6/7 in this exercise. Like, are we overreacting here, Rupert?
When you watch all 22, I don't think so. And the fact that we only got, 3 or 4 games to watch last year. So we've already gotten more games to see of him this year. He's already gotten hurt again. And despite like the jaw-dropping highlight throws, he's missing so much of the simple stuff of playing quarterback with, getting to your read on time, missing guys that are wide open, a little out in the flat, just missing by 3 or 4 feet. And it's just like stuff that just stalls drives, like not making the simple throws. And then he'll follow that up by, throwing a 30-yard pass down the field, like to the corner. It's like he makes those throws and then misses the super easy open throws. And then just the fact that he just hasn't looked comfortable. I would say, like, just going through his progressions. And it seems like when it's not like the first kind of scripted plays to kind of start the game, like the first couple drives, he kind of seems out of sync. So it's kind of giving me pauses with taking him too high. I still believe in the player because he's still very young. He's what did he start 1 year in college plus like 2 games or something like that. So it's not like he's been starting for 4 years in college and then kind of has this slow ramp up, I guess you could say, in developing with the progressions and throwing on time and on target for short and intermediate routes. So I'm not completely like out on him by any means, but I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And he is just 22 years old. And this is a super flex exercise. And the upside is still just absolutely bonkers. The team has a lot invested in him and is absolutely going to try to develop him and get this turned around. Even this year, he week 1, he had a 27 fantasy point game. So, like, the upside is 100% there. I couldn't take him any higher than this because I just feel so confident in all the guys that we just took 1 through 5 that they're cornerstone pieces for my dynasty roster. I couldn't take the risk on Richardson above any of those guys that feel like such sure things to me. But again, when you get to this point, and it's like it's between him and a couple other guys for me that I like, but This is the point in the draft where I feel comfortable taking a shot on that upside, but it's not without concern with what we've seen so far, for sure. So uh, you went with Gibbs. We already talked about him. I took Richardson. Moving on to pick number 7 here. You took Richardson, who we just talked
Yep.
about. I still am not taking Laporta here. Clearly, I'm very concerned about this start to the season. I don't know. Like, I can't trust him in my lineup right now. I don't know when that's going to change. I'm going with the guy that right now is wide receiver 4 on the season, and that is Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed, who is not seeing a massive target share, in the sense that he's only had one game above 6 targets so far this season. So he's not one of these guys that is just absolute target hog, getting it on volume. He's living a lot on touchdowns right now. But in the 3 games with Jordan Love at quarterback, 33 points, 27 points, 14. Those are pretty good outputs. He's young. He's a guy that I liked his tape. He seems like the very clear number 1 guy in Green Bay to me, and I feel more confident in him at this point than Sam Laporta. I could hear an argument for Laporta because of what he did last year, and that tight end is much more scarce than wide receiver, and all that kind of stuff. But I think just the fact that Jaden Reed is like winning me weeks right now, and Laporta is losing me weeks, I went with Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that he was a rookie last year almost when I was like going down the rankings from last year. I was like, oh gosh, Jaden Reed was in this class too. And yeah, I was much lower on him on this list, but it's not that I'm low on him as a player.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, you didn't take him until 12, man.
Yeah, it was a really stacked class when you look back at it. You could have really stacked up your roster even if you just had your normal first 3 picks.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is too, like a lot of these guys that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this draft were not first round picks in
Right.
2023. Like they are now when we're redrafting it. But I mean, you could have had Jaden Reed in the 3rd round in a lot of leagues. He was one of my favorite sleeper targets. I've got a lot of Jaden Reed shares. So I'm very excited, kind of going through this. Like you took him at 112 in this exercise, which I feel like is crazy low given what he's doing so far this season. But and even the second half of last season, he was really good. But either way you look at it, he's significantly risen since we actually were doing 2023 rookie drafts. So it's exciting.
Big time.
So at the 8th pick, 108 in this exercise, I finally take Sam Laporta. I can't put it off any longer. He was the Dynasty tight end 1. It's only been 4 down weeks. Hopefully he turns it around at some point. The talent is definitely there. I liked him as a prospect. The draft capital is there. So at 108, I'm taking Sam Laporta, the guy that spent all offseason for most people as the Dynasty tight end 1. Kind of shows how loaded this class is. You made an interesting pick here. I was pretty surprised by this, especially given how this season has gone so far. You took Tank Dell at 108. Tell us why you did that, Rupert.
I guess I was looking at the exercise a little differently. I was looking long term and then over the last year and a half of production, not as much just focusing on this year's production. So the fact that he's had to Stroud, for quite a while, I don't really see that changing. I don't see Diggs staying on the team forever. So just looking at it from that perspective, and it seemed like him and Stroud just are completely in sync since day 1 of last year. He knows when to scramble and get open. They just always seem to be on the right wavelength. So to me, he's going to be a fantasy producer for years to come. Granted that he's healthy. And I think that's going to skyrocket once Diggs isn't there anymore.
Yeah, man, I don't hate it, and I don't think you're viewing the exercise wrong. I mean, you're just like, who would you take first in Dynasty? So for
Yeah.
me, like the production this year is part of that equation. Last year is part of the equation. How I viewed them as a prospect is part of the equation. I loved Tank Dell as a prospect. He was a priority third round target for me in rookie drafts. I have a lot of shares on my roster, and last year I was very, very excited about that. And I'm not like giving up on him as a player, but I do think like I'm concerned. I was listening to Matt Harmon talk about him today, and he said, I think he's got to be still recovering because we forget he was shot in the offseason.
Yeah.
And on top of that, had a pretty major fractured leg that ended his season last year. So he might not be fully 100% back yet. And you've got the Diggs factor.
Yeah. I personally don't think he is fully back yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get all that. And I like Tank Dell. And I want Tank Dell on my dynasty rosters. I just personally couldn't take him above some of the guys that we're about to talk about here. So one of those we both took. We have finally a consensus here. At
Multiple.
109, we both took Rashee Rice. And this one for me, he would have been higher if it wasn't for he's expected to miss most of this season with a torn ACL, if not all of this season. ACL, LCL, there's a lot of
LCL.
mystery surrounding this injury. It's like normally we would have gotten the news like the day after the game, like, okay, the MRI came back and this is what it is. But it was like all week, this is he going to miss the year? Is he not? Let's get a second opinion. So it's a little bit weird, a little bit mysterious, but it seems like probably he's missing the entire season. And then you've got, over the summer, they've kind of pushed back his court stuff, his legal stuff off the field to this summer. And so you could be looking at a significant suspension coming next season. So if it wasn't for that unknown of like, is he going to miss most of the next 2 years and tank his dynasty value? I would have had him higher here because what he was doing to start this season and really to finish last season too is league winning production. The clear number one guy in a Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid offense, absolute target hog, consistent week in and week out producer, not a boom bust guy. Like if you got less than 16 fantasy points from him, you're disappointed because he's just a machine. And then he's got the boom weeks too, where he goes for 25 plus. And so yeah, it's hard to argue that if it wasn't for the injury and the looming suspension that he would be higher than 109 here.
Yeah. He gets open early in his route, and Andy Reid knows how to scheme it, and Patrick knows how to feed it to him. As the perfect combination. And to me, he looks like he's gotten more athletic since getting to the NFL. He looks a little more faster and explosive. His yards after catch has been really, really good in the NFL. So I'm really disappointed in the weeks that I have him, where I actually tried to sell him all offseason and I couldn't. And I'm glad no one would buy him from me at a price that I liked. And, it was looking like I had a really explosive wide receiver room, and then he goes out. So disappointing on that front, but maybe this could be a good time to try and buy low.
Yeah, the injury is really disappointing.
Especially the way it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. Friendly fire, taking out his own guy. Yeah, Rashee Rice, though, looked really, really good. Looks much better than what I thought of him as a prospect. I don't have very many Rashee Rice shares. I kind of thought I was surprised he went in the second round of the NFL draft. I didn't have that grade on him. And I thought he was being overdrafted in rookie drafts because of the Chiefs factor. I was very clearly wrong. So you could have gotten him in the second round of 2023 rookie drafts, and that would have been a steal, I think. So at number 10, we both took Jackson Smith-Njigba, a guy that I said earlier on this show, I took him at 104 in a league over CJ Stroud, and I deeply regret it. But that being said, Jackson Smith-Njigba, like for being 10th on this list, he's pretty good. Like this is not he's fallen here. This is lower than he would have been going in 2023, but he's starting to come on here. Like double-digit fantasy output 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Double-digit targets twice this season. He had a 16 target game and a 12 target game. Last week 7 targets. So like he's starting to get the volume. He's much more involved than he was last season. We know that the talent is there. We loved him as a prospect. He's got the first round draft capital. I think the only thing that's still holding him back a little bit is Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are both still in that offense. It seems like only a matter of time at some point where he just becomes this absolute alpha target hog, dominant fantasy force, and we're getting him here at 110. Like, this is kind of insane.
It's such a loaded draft class. And you can even go like halfway into the second round. You're still getting really good impact players.
For sure.
Yeah. Basically, so far what we've seen from JSN this year is pretty much exactly who we thought he was coming out. It's just, like you said, just takes a opportunity. Yeah, you can't have, Pro Bowlers in front of him. And he still has them on the roster, and he's produced that so far this year. So really love it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel fine about plugging him into my lineup right now. Like, there's going to be some down weeks, but there's also going to be some really good weeks. And I think it's only going to keep getting better and better. So, yeah, at number 11, these are the two guys, like, in most 2023 rookie drafts, it was Jackson Smith and Jigba was wide receiver 1, and then wide receiver 2 was either Flowers or Jordan Addison. And here we are talking about these guys at the 111. I took Zay Flowers. You took Jordan Addison. We'll start with Flowers. The reason that I took him ahead of Addison is just because of, he's the clear number 1 guy on his team. When I look at Addison this year, he has the one boom week where he had 23 fantasy points, but even that was on 4 targets. He just had a long touchdown, right? The other weeks, he would have given you a dud. He would have contributed to you losing your matchup. And that's without Hawkinson back. So it's a really crowded room. He's a talented guy. He's got the draft capital. I liked him as a prospect. But Zay Flowers has, just been much more consistent in his target share, and I feel better about putting him in my lineup. I think he's got a safer floor and a better ceiling. So I went with Zay Flowers here. You went with Jordan Addison. Tell me why you did that.
Looking more long-term again, I just really like watching his tape. He's really stuck out to me. I've watched a little more Vikings this year, just trying to see and evaluate Sam Darnold. And to me, Addison's getting open a lot. He looks so good, very fluid in and out of his breaks. Mm-hmm. Like you said, he suffers from being the number 2 on his team, or potentially number 3 once Hawkinson's fully back. But I just think long term, he's just going to be a really steady player.
Yeah, I mean, I like I think the thing for me is I like Zay Flowers long term too. So I like both of their tape. I like both of their talent. So I'll go with the guy that's helping me a little bit more now. But I like both of these guys long term a lot. But you could go either way. I'm not going to argue it.
Yeah, we all loved some Zay Flowers film last year, and I loved what I saw a lot in his rookie season. So I felt quite gross waving him out of the first round on this.
Yeah, so you left him out of your top 12. I actually had Addison outside my top 12. So at the 112, you finally took Jaden Reed. Shame on you for not taking him higher. You finally took Jaden Reed, and I
forgot about him. Okay,
I took Dalton Kincaid. So Dalton Kincaid right now, he's been disappointing for sure this season. The targets have been up a little bit the last few weeks, 7 targets and 6 targets the last 2 weeks. The snap share is okay. The usage is just it's not what I thought it was going to be coming into this year, especially given that wide receiver room being kind of ugly. And honestly, like, I don't fully understand it unless he's just not as talented as my estimation of him. I just don't like. They could use the help right now. The wide receiver room is not getting the job done. The offense is not looking great, and they could definitely use somebody to step up. And Kincaid, I thought, was going to be the clear number one option in this offense, and so far has not been the case. Has not cleared 50 receiving yards yet this season. So it's been a disappointment. And if you wanted to take Addison above him, I wouldn't blame you at all. I think I went with Kincaid here mostly out of the scarcity of the position and just hoping that things will turn around and liking the talent and the draft capital's there. And yeah, it's kind of a gut. Like if you took Addison, I'm not going to fault you for it. But to me, I don't feel confident starting either one of them right now. And long term, I think I maybe feel more confident in Addison as a talent that, like, when he gets the opportunity and he's not in such a crowded room, that he'll do more with it. So I don't know. It's a toss up for me. I really went with Kincaid because it's tight end premium and it's a scarce position, but I don't feel great about this pick.
I don't fault you at all for making it. I think I probably would have had him in the next two picks if I remember right. Like you said, scarcity, tight end premium. Even though he hasn't cleared 50 yards, you'll still take the touchdown production. But yeah, it has been disappointing to not have him be the focal point in the offense, to have Dawson Knox still, playing more than we thought he would. And, hopefully it turns around like we alluded to earlier. Tight ends are very slow to develop typically for fantasy purposes. So I'm not going to freak out that it's year 2 and he's not an absolute stud. Normally
Sure.
It's year 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So he still has a chance to be an absolute stud.
That's a good point. Yeah, so we're going to sign off here in a second, and we're going to go record the bonus episode for you, which we're actually, if you're a member, we're going to be redrafting the 2024 draft class. So, maybe a little bit of how much do we react to 4 weeks of stuff, but we're going to redraft the 2024 class on the bonus show. Before we do, I want to give some honorable mentions for this 2023 class, guys that we did not take. Josh Downs, we both like a lot. It seems like the concern obviously is Anthony Richardson wasn't sustaining anybody from a fantasy perspective when he was the starter, but these couple weeks under Joe Flacco, Josh Downs has been kind of a stud. So he looks really good. We like the talent. He seems like the number 2 guy in Indy right now. Tucker Kraft is coming on really strong as the obvious tight end 1 for the Packers. Tank Bigsby, back from the dead, giving ETN a run for his money, looks really, really good. Dontavian Wicks has become kind of a favorite sleeper for a lot of people. Can't catch, but can route people up for darn sure. And there's a couple more guys you could throw in there too, but those are kind of the main ones I wanted to shout out and give an honorable mention to. So that's going to do it for the main show tonight. You can find me on Twitter /X at CouchScoutsFF. You can find Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF. We'd love to engage with you there. You can join our Discord for free at the link in our bio, in the show notes, wherever you're listening. And leave a 5-star review. Drop a comment. Leave us a subscribe if you're on YouTube. We really appreciate it. All that engagement helps people find the show. And so if you're a member, we'll see you in just a minute over on the bonus.